Hey, Bruce, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's really great to be here and have the opportunity to talk to you and have a chance to get some exposure to your listeners. So my name's Bruce Valentine. I'm currently the Global Managing Director of a company called Optech Systems. They're part of the Human Edits Group, who are headquartered out of Detroit, and they're the world's leading company for crash safety. But my business really focuses on a mix of different products and services. Yeah, all business to business, all requiring different lengths of sales cycle, different types of sales approach. So yeah, really looking forward to the conversation today.
Cool. And why sales for you?
I was kind of forced into sales. I didn't have a choice, and I think looking back, I kind of went into industry straight from high school. So I didn't take a traditional route of going through college. So I kind of did in the UK what's called kind of an apprenticeship. So right in the last year of high school, you get to do a week's work experience. And I went to this local company who specialized in microwave components and cable assemblies, selling into space and defense type industries. And it must have made a good impression because they took me on as an apprentice. And I went through various, started off in production engineering, ended up working as a kind of customer support engineer. So people will call up. This is the day before all the customers had all the information at their fingertips. That's where kind of the sales people needed support from the office, and you'd be helping with part numbers, helping customers choose different products. And then I had the opportunity to go out to the Swiss headquarters to work as an application engineer. This is all being done by one of the, really influential mentor in my career. He was like 3 or 4 steps removed from me, but clearly looking out for me. So I went out to Switzerland, and I had a great time, skiing, snowboarding, raclette, fondue, young guy, pretty much single at the time. It's fantastic. And we, I got engaged to a girl up there. And I remember this boss coming along and saying, hey, congratulations, you're going back to the UK to be a key account manager. And I'm like, okay, do I have a choice in this? I said, not really. This is done. See you in 3 months, and you're gonna get on the road. And this was just at the point of for the telecoms boom. So there was a lot of manufacturing actually done in the UK at this time for mobile base station manufacturers.
Yep.
And I was looking after a really high growth US telecom company headquartered out of Swindon. And it was a great opportunity because, I do say to some people, you could put anybody could have been successful in those times, but it taught me a lot about, in a key account, it's how much value as a junior salesperson can you add. So I had like a mentor who helped me out. And I always remember the first thing he said to me is, Bruce, you need to learn to read upside down and always look at the whiteboards on the engineers' cubicles. So okay, I've never forgotten that. But once you kind of got past that piece, you understood you're there to help people, help the engineers get the best product and make sense of the choices out there. Then it kind of evolves. Well, let me help you with this extra thing. Let me help you with a change note. Let me help you get past that roadblock internally. I managed to get my own contractor's badge, walking around the accounts, and it was fantastic. And just a little sidebar, the funniest thing was that at the time it was quite usual for people to get company cars in the UK. And so I started day one, and they realized I didn't have a driving license.
Uh-oh.
So they were like, okay, you're going to need one if you're going to go call on accounts. So that's kind of how I got started in the business, kind of production and technical engineering into my first kind of key account role.
And what you like about it?
I think I'm pretty. Not a lot of salespeople. Many salespeople are extroverted, so I like people.
Yeah.
I think I like problem solving. I like being creative, and I think that's one of the interesting things is that often you can see the links that people that are in one individual function that don't span many functions don't get to see. So that for me was like really quite good fun.
And how long did it take before you knew it was your thing, your calling or your profession?
Well, I would say I still don't know what I want to do.
When you grow up?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it was probably, I went from a key account manager role to work as a product manager for a big Finnish telecoms company. And that gave me a different perspective on kind of, looking at pricing, looking at product types, looking at kind of what supports the sales team, and being embedded in account teams. Had my own business for a while, and that really taught me the lesson of, sales is just such an important fuel for the business, and it's difficult. It's very hard. When you're trying to pay the rent and pay the staff, that's when it gets real quick. And at that point, I kind of my kind of direction was set. Sales is my thing. Sales, application engineering, product management, that kind of sales and marketing track.
And what got you into leadership?
Again, I think when I was very young, it's one of these things that seems to kind of happen by accident again. But when I look at it and think, well, what really happened when I was very young, there's a youth organization in the UK called the Army Cadets, and kind of joined that. Somehow got to be like the top cadet in the county, taking the whole battalion parade. Really want to join the military, but in the UK, you have to get your parents' signature if you're under 18. So my mom wouldn't sign and said, look, come, when you're 18, do the hell, what the hell do you want? And at that point, I was doing this apprenticeship piece. And I thought, well, actually, this is pretty good fun. I think I'll try not to get shot or blown up. This is pre kind of Afghanistan and Iraq, stuff like this. But I did join the reserve forces, and that really teaches you some lessons about looking after. If you look after the team, they're going to look after you. Some of the stuff that stays with me is, you used to get press ups and what we called beasted if your button was undone. And I remember the guy said, it's not about the button. He goes, if you don't pay attention to detail on that, what else are you not paying attention to detail on? And that kind of thing sticks with me about when I look at selling. Sometimes the devil is in the detail, and if you ignore the detail, it can really bite you much later on in the process. You think, just for the sake of an extra bit of work here, it could have prevented a deal falling through, or you could have got an even better deal if you'd have done the hard work.
Well, it's a lot like battle. It's a preparation or prevention profession.
Yeah, I think so. If you look at I'm digressing a bit here, but I'm sure there's a book in there somewhere where you look at the standard military doctrine. The first infantry phase is you advance to contact. So you've got the terrain, where you want to go. At some point, you're going to get some people shooting at you, and then the next question is it effective? Are they actually really shooting at you, or just in the general direction of you? Yeah. And then once you kind of understand there's a real threat or real opportunity from a sales perspective, then you kind of close with the enemy. You fight through the position, and then you reorganize afterwards to understand what's happened after the deal. And I think there's some echoes between how you can approach that. Obviously, it has to be constructive rather than destructive, but
yeah, because I see the people who both get into sales leadership and like it and accelerate at it are the people that like working in teams.
Yeah, I think it's the support of the team. If you practice together and you help each other get better, it's definitely a team sport. That people who support each other will outperform those that are lone wolves. And I think lone wolves have their place. Some people could be very, very successful and get satisfaction from that, and not taking anything away from it. But I think from a personal point of view, being able to help others succeed, that really gives me a buzz. It's great to see.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, being able to succeed through people instead of just directly.
Yeah, and I think one interesting thing is early on in my career, I thought, well, I see really good people struggling to get to the next level, and they're kind of looking up, and they're not looking down. And part of the problem is they can't get promoted because they're so good at their job. The senior VPs and the business owners don't want to lose that cash cow. And a lot of the salespeople I've worked with don't want to give that up because it's a cash cow. You think, well, but if you kind of be a bit more humble, perhaps, and get somebody ready to be promoted into your job, that can unlock opportunity for you. And I think that's definitely been something I've looked at to say, how do I replace myself? because that allows me to access the next step in the ladder.
Yeah. And what do you look for in salespeople when you hire?
Curiosity.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest kind of signals for success. I've worked with some excellent people. Some are kind of very process driven, but the ones that really stand out to me, the ones that are really fascinated by the customer problem and how to solve it. And they're also curious about how is that organization, not just the technical problem or the product opportunity, but why are they doing this? Why are they doing it now? And why would you do it with us rather than somebody else?
And that's it, because a lot of people don't look at curiosity. It's a proactive skill.
Yeah, and it's tough because you're going to get punched in the face a lot. People don't actually want to share with you what the real reason is.
Yeah.
And particularly when you kind of rub that up against, a lot of buyer-seller interactions, is that information. The buyer's always got more information than you, and often they don't want to be open because it puts them in a position of potential weakness rather than
And most buyers are overconfident. Most people are overconfident. They think they know what they want, but then
it's Dunning-Kruger in action. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sales is easy, therefore anybody can do it. You go, well, actually, once you get into the ground and carry a bag, it's damn tough.
Yeah. And usually they want the cheapest, smallest thing possible.
Absolutely.
Lowest risk. And if it doesn't do what they think it should do, whose fault is it?
It's never theirs, that's for sure.
Never theirs. And I think what you told me about your mentor teaching you about, read that whiteboard, memorize it, read upside down, because that's what's really going on there.
Yes, exactly. You kind of build up a picture, and to view your job sometimes as an intelligence officer, right? You've got all these different information points. You're trying to figure what's really going on here. What's really the motivation?
Yeah, because I used to be the guy with the badge going in and getting people to use the thing that we sold. And when I go back to the office, the managers would pull me into a room. So what'd you find out? Like I was a spy behind enemy lines. And I was like, what do you want to know? What do you want me to find out?
And I think that's one of as I've moved on in my career and got more and more kind of added more functions to my role, that's one of the things where you think there's a real untapped seam of intelligence in the sales network you have. And that, I think they call it boundary spanning. If you've got those jobs where you're out visiting multiple types of customers and people, classically, quality people, salespeople, purchasers, you can build a real strong picture of what's really going on.
Yeah.
But I don't think many companies do that very well. I think
it doesn't happen that often. And I remember getting pushback because one summer it was pretty slow. So I go, look, I'm going to hang out at this office, the customer's place. I got a badge. I can walk right in. I had lunch with all the people every day, breakfast, coffee. They didn't know I was a vendor. Everyone was a subcontractor. And I was just part of the crew. And what I found out and was able to do was no sales rep or pre-sales person could have done.
Correct.
Just, showing up for a meeting. And, so I really found out the real issue and then solved the real issue, which drove demand for 10 times what we had done.
Wow. Yeah. It's getting under the skin of it, isn't it? And really, what's driving I keep going back to this, why change? Why change now? Why change to us? What's the motivation there?
Right. And they're going to give some politically correct answer to that. And then you have to go again, like a therapist. Tell me about your dad.
And what I love is when I'm on the receiving end of selling as well. So I get that a lot more now in my current job. I think some of the gold standards is definitely set by like software as a service, where they'll kind of put these barriers in place or hurdles. So, well, we're not really going to tell you what you need until we can go through like a value workshop. And I think, and that's one of the things I wish I'd learned earlier on in my career. It's always think about the meeting after the meeting. Are you actually helping write the business case?
Yes.
For your customer? And if you're not, you're probably not going to win that deal.
Well, and are they treating you like a vendor or a collaborator, somebody part of their team?
Yes.
Are you held at arm's length? Like, okay, well, tell them only this.
yeah, and I love the kind of when you get into key account management and sales leadership, you can kind of, which box is your customer? Is it strategic? Is it transactional? And what I love is the buyers are doing exactly the same. And often you get these companies where they both want completely different things out of the relationship, and the poor salesperson's stuck with that problem, right? Well, my boss wants to be relationship driven, but actually my customer just wants to be transactional. And kind of how do you bridge that gap or make the best of it?
Yeah, and it's a skill to kind of get them to warm up, because I think everybody starts transactionally,
Yes.
right? What is it? How's it work? What's it cost? But that doesn't really answer the real questions.
Correct. Yeah, that's kind of table stakes to get to play in the game.
And think about when you bought a house, a car, or a TV. It's like, you get online and you think you know everything, right?
Well, yeah, and then I think that's an excellent point, Brian. I think I'm a kind of a Gartner fanboy, I suppose. I got exposed to some of their stuff, and they've got this great concept of what they call this. I don't know if you've heard of the sense maker approach.
No,
and it's really good. So their view is, everyone's got all the information, and can you when you're looking on Amazon to buy something, you spend hours, or for cars, which model, which type, pros, good reviews here, bad reviews there. It becomes so painful. Often you just decide, I just can't be bothered I'm not going to choose the right thing. Therefore, I don't choose anything. And they got some interesting data where it says, often 70, 80% of the time in these B2B situations, the decision is not to do anything because they can't get consensus, because there's too much information, there's too much to understand.
Yeah, and there's that transfer of ownership doesn't take place.
Exactly. And I think the successful salespeople will help the customers make sense of what they already know, what they potentially don't know. That's where so rather than being the holder of the information, early in my career, I've got the catalogs, I've got the part numbers come through me. Now it's a case of guiding them to the right decision.
Right, because is it really information, or is it you getting comfortable with how it works and how your workflow is going to change, and that you can do it?
And it's hard, right? Because you've got to know your products and services super well, and you've got to know your competitors, and you've got to kind of frame that in the context of the customer's problem. And that's a lot of work. And that's where the really successful salespeople invest the time in learning. I've worked with salespeople that, they'll just wing it. They'll just say, I'm charismatic enough, I'm extrovert enough. Well, I'll carry. I'll turn up and I'll throw up, show up and throw up. I think is the expression.
I can see people taking meetings because someone's charismatic. I can't see people really making an enterprise decision because someone's charismatic.
Exactly. Yeah. When you get into the big ticket CapEx spends, that's not going to carry you very far at all.
No. It's somebody's going to really, especially inside the account, explain why this is so much better than any of the alternatives and what it means to the company.
Yeah, and it's that meeting after the meeting, isn't it? So okay, got 3 vendors. This is 100 grand more expensive. Why are you going for them? And if the salesperson's often not going to be in the room,
not going to be in the room. Yeah, and this goes to that we may know how to sell, but they don't know how to buy.
Yeah, and this is why I think some people say good salespeople can't be good sales leaders. It's a different skill set. But I think often the good salespeople are good at helping their stakeholders sell for them.
Yes.
And I think that's the way they evolve their careers to become, bigger leaders and bigger organizations.
And was leadership a big adjustment, or was it a natural transition for you?
It was, I'd say it felt natural. It was in, the first, when you kind of figure out that you're moving from a peer position to a leader position. I think I've been quite lucky. I had good people around me, and I'd always taken care to try and be respectful and help them. Even at the peer level, you can help your colleagues in different regions with different products, and generally got a level of support to move things forwards. And it was always about, okay, I've been complaining about how difficult the job is. Now I've got an opportunity to fix it, and that's where you can. Often it was simple things. The sales guys needed data, or where am I? And depending on the character, some of the more coin operated colleagues I had, the more they knew about what their bonus payment was going to be, the more business you got. Whereas others were interested in, where are the patterns in the customer buying data? When are they likely to rebuy? And I'll use that to help them not be late with the products.
Yeah.
So I think that was the interesting thing, is that, moving up, but you've got a responsibility to help down, and it becomes a bit of a virtuous circle, man.
And did it mess with your head with the different motivations and income changes and internal requirements?
I think the biggest thing that stuck with me is it's not just, sorry, I'm kind of stuttering a bit here, Brian, but I think the interesting piece is you become a filter, you become like a dielectric. And that for me was kind of, when you look up, you think they all know what they're doing. They've all got a plan. They've all got a strategy. And then you start to question, do they really? I'm not so sure. And your job you have to protect the team from the more outlandish requests you might get, or the more stupid ideas you might be asked to implement. And then, but you also conversely have to protect the management from some of the team members who might be
Harebrained ideas.
Yeah, and it's like you kind of walk in that tightrope. That for me was like the biggest shift in approach that I had to take.
Yeah. And what mistakes have you seen younger salespeople make that you'd like to shake them and say, don't do this, do that?
Yeah, I think it's not even just the young ones. I think
or any salespeople.
I think I see it a lot that they basically say, I know how to do this. It's that Dunning-Kruger thing, right? It's like, I think I know my approach. It's worked for me. The company stuck me on some dumb training course. The instructor doesn't know anything. I'll be fine. And I would just say to them, keep an open mind. Don't think, what you're doing might be working now, but the world's changing. Buyers are changing, products are changing. You need to stay ahead of that and invest in yourself. And you can always listen more to the customers. I've seen people talk themselves out of deals.
Yes.
They just wouldn't stop talking.
And a lot of people don't get out of that Dunning-Kruger effect.
No, it's so hard. And I think it up until I must have 10, 15 years before I realized that I've missed so many opportunities to accelerate my career. I think one of the books that blew me away. I didn't know it existed. There's a kind of a sales academic called Andrew Zoltner, I think. And he's got several books like Accelerating Sales Performance. And there's stuff that I must have wasted months of my life recreating on territory planning, reward scheme design. It's been done before. And that was my mistake, right? If I'd have tried to recycle rather than invent, I would have been much more impactful much earlier on in my career.
Well, that's right, because if you start from scratch, you don't get any compounding. If you
correct, absolutely right.
You can take something that somebody else used. It may not be perfect or completely applicable, but you can build off of it.
Yeah, and I think that was blew me away, because it's such a time saver. And like you say, you always have to adapt it to your context and be prepared to adapt it. That's absolutely fine. But there's the academic piece of if you've done what the sales problem we're trying to solve, has somebody already solved for it? Because if they have, you're going to be ahead of the pack there.
Yeah. And have you found a way of identifying somebody who's stuck in the Dunning-Kruger effect in the interview?
Yeah, well, often it manifests itself in the listening skills and interruptions, or often they'll be very dismissive of, so what do you think about new approaches? What's your take on this? And this is like, well, it's always worked for me. This is how I roll. And you can also see it, in terms of when you look at their resumes and say, have you actually, is this person investing in themselves?
Right. Yeah.
And it's things. It doesn't have to be a course. It could be things like an interest in the profession. listening to podcasts, looking at some of the stuff that's out there for free, and just thinking, what does this mean? Not just consuming it, but thinking about it a little as well.
Well, that's it, because sales, I can't think of a profession that's so broad and deep. And yet so many people try and make it all about personality and some innate, mojo that they have.
Yeah, what just cracks me up all the time. I haven't met a single, or personally, I've not met a single salesperson that wanted to be a salesperson.
Oh,
They're all kind of, refugees from engineering or quality or operations. They've kind of drifted into this sales career. And often, they've got to a position of leadership. And at that point, they feel it's too late to say, actually, I don't know how to do this, or how do I do it better?
right.
And because, you can't, if you're a VP of sales, who do you go to for help to do a better job?
How many deals do you walk into where it's like, well, I haven't seen this before, right? Where you're just like, oh, the change in leadership, funding, whatever, and your deal's on the table. How do you get it across the line? And it's like, well, it's not personality. You got to put a case together.
Yeah, and it's that I think, there's that non-linear sales a lot of companies, finance teams and stuff will say, well, you sent a quote, therefore you're 20%, you're at 20% now. You've had a negotiation, you're at 50%.
Oh yeah, that always works.
It's like, no, like you say, new CEO comes in, some, head engineer finds something interesting on the internet, your deal's just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it's really trying to figure out who are those people. And I think the junior salespeople often will be single point of contact. They have a friendly buyer or a friendly engineer.
Yes, single point of contact. Yep.
And that is almost always fatal in,
Yep.
you can, on average, they'll probably do okay. But the ones that are, paranoid about, do they know all the stakeholders, are the ones that really make the big bucks, for sure.
Yeah. And what skill do you see is the difference between like the B+ player and the A player?
I think it's often, how they're counting the questions. So I think the really good people I've worked with have kind of really tried to get down to asking questions that, what is the impact? What's the you told me about the pain points or the gains you want to make, but the really good ones take that another couple of levels and figure out, okay, what does that mean financially to this person or this business? And the customer walks away, go, well, actually, now I know why I need to buy from these guys.
Yeah, that's a great point. Hey, Bruce, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I'd say, hit me up on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to get hold of me. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Brian. And again, I think as a fellow sales professional, I think it's great what you're doing and trying to raise the profile of the game in the industry. So well done.